Step 3, immerse yourself in the right environment. Where you choose to give birth matters. In fact, it's one of the reasons so many of my clients end up choosing to birth at home, or at least outside of the hospital. I hinted about this earlier that most hospitals are not set up to facilitate a true natural birth. This is because the entire hospital system was developed for efficiency, and birth is not efficient. In Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, she explains how the system actually works, the attitudes of the people working in the hospitals, and what it can be like as a midwife coming in with different values. She also talks about how labor is handled inside the system versus when it is left to unfold in its own time. What you need to know right now is this: you must choose your birth location based on where you feel safest to let your birth unfold on its own. That means that if you decide you feel safer where there is immediate access to medical intervention, then you need to research the hospital and their policies carefully and see whether they even support a mostly hands-off birth experience. Bottom line is this: you cannot birth where you don't feel safe. You also cannot make decisions and get out of fear if you don't feel safe. The right environment cannot exist when you don't feel safe, and that's what this section will help you create. There are actually 3 parts to this. The first is where you'll give birth, but the other 2 are often invisible and overlooked, and they directly influence your birthing space. So, what are these other 2 environmental forces? First of all, you need the right environment for learning your options, your rights, and how birth works. Let's go back to the example with your childhood education, where you were taught what to think. With typical childbirth books and classes, that same environment exists. Lessons are structured based on what the educator thinks is most relevant, and if you are learning from a nurse, that training will focus on coping with the pain, the typical labor stages, and interventions you can expect when things go wrong. The entire model might seem normal because that's what has always been taught. But remember what I said about hidden biases and intentions. There's an intention with those classes too. Your friendly labor and delivery nurse teaching you all those breathing techniques is also teaching you something else that you might not be able to see right away: how to be a good, compliant patient. In fact, it's built into the language of "we might allow you," or "we recommend," or "here's what will happen." There's typically no discussion of whether or not you can decline any of the routine examinations because they don't factor individuality into it at all. I learned this firsthand when I took these classes back when I was a first-time mother. I kept thinking, these classes keep talking about a birth experience I don't even plan on having. I'm the only one here who has a midwife. I'm the only one here who is having a home birth. Most of the other moms in the class wound up having some level of intervention in their births, despite the nurse's warning that showing up at the hospital too early would result in more stuff being done to them. Out of 20 women, I was the only one who beat the system and had a physiological birth. One other mom had a vaginal birth with forceps and an episiotomy. The lesson here is that you need to be careful who you are learning from, because they might tell you the wrong things. They might operate on the medical model of birth that leads to high interventions and emergency cesareans. If you're going to choose to read books or take classes, and I do encourage you to do so, then what you need to do is think first about the kind of birth you want to have, and then seek out the information that will help you plan for that experience. Don't just sign up for any random childbirth class that's on offer based on price or recommendations from the mom groups. You need to really do your homework and find out what the classes offer, who the instructor is, their birth philosophy, and the kinds of births experienced by past students. If you're really stuck, you can ask doulas. We often know who is teaching classes, and we like to pass on referrals to the better ones. The next part of getting the right environment is where you go for support outside of friends and family. I'm talking about online and in-person communities, the mom groups. There is so much I could say about these groups, and it's not all kind. Some are just not worth the headache. The reason I say this is because groups of any kind can create a hive mind. And this means that when you ask a question that threatens someone else's birth philosophy or triggers their trauma, they can swarm and tell you how you're wrong. This is especially damaging when this is your first baby and you don't know what to expect, because other people who have been previously traumatized will insist that whatever concern you have isn't valid and that it's normal. A particularly horrifying example of this is when a first-time mom I knew asked in a mom group whether or not she was making a big deal over her doctor shoving his fingers high up into her cervix and hurting her during an exam. She had been checking her own cervix and had mentioned to her doctor that she intended to have a natural birth. This doctor decided to teach her a lesson by deliberately doing a painful exam, and then told her that if she couldn't handle that, then she would be begging for the epidural when labor got going. As terrible as this story is, what happened afterward was far worse. You see, many women poured into the comments to admonish this mother for daring to check her own cervix. "You're not a doctor, so you can't possibly know what it was supposed to be like," they told her. Many told her that what happened to her was normal. Others told her that she probably offended the doctor by acting like a know-it-all, and that while he had been aggressive, she really needed to trust his medical experience over Dr. Google. A few women were bold enough to call it what it was: assault. While I was able to calm her down and validate her feelings, the damage had still been done. She could move forward and do what she wanted anyway, but those voices still haunted her, and she spent a lot of time texting me over the next few weeks, questioning whether or not her experiences were normal. I'm going to tell you what I told her. Just because something is normal in a certain group or culture doesn't mean that your feelings don't matter. This is why you need to spend most of your time in communities that reaffirm that your feelings are valid, even if they don't necessarily feel the same way you do about the situation. They need to support your right to believe, feel, and do what you think is best. The reason I created my own Facebook group was because I was tired of the hive mind and wanted my members to have more support. I will never tell my clients or members of my community that their feelings are wrong. I also do not tell them what they should do, only offer the possibilities. I ask a lot of questions too, and that's what your homework is all about. So now we go into journal exercise 1.3. Again, as a reminder, all of the questions are inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. You can get that on Amazon, or if you just want the list of questions for now, go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras and download it. Journal exercise 1.3. Take out your coil notebook again and start thinking about the environment you are learning in, getting support from, and where you plan to birth your baby. If you are choosing a home birth, also consider possible backup hospitals in your area that you might choose to transfer to in the rare event that something doesn't feel right or you simply change your mind. Be as detailed as you feel you need to be and come back to this exercise often. Ask yourself the following: do you feel that your thoughts, feelings, and values are being respected here? Do you feel seen, heard, and like all your wishes actually matter? Are you being given the resources you need here that will help you achieve what you want in this pregnancy and birth? Can you ask questions without feeling stupid? When you think about your upcoming birth, what conditions need to be in place for you to feel safe and supported in your process? Does this community, birth space, or learning environment help you get more of what you want? Or do you feel that there might be things that will get in the way and cause you to doubt yourself? You will likely come back to these questions as you research childbirth classes, join mom groups, and choose where you plan to birth, particularly if you choose a hospital birth. Once you have determined the best place for you to birth, you're ready for the next steps, hiring people to support you. I also want to remind you at this point that if you go and get the extras that come with this book, there is a guide on how to choose your birth location. I had so much in my original manuscript that I needed to break it up in order to keep this book streamlined and focused on the 5 pillars. But if you do want to know more about how to choose a birth location, just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras.